Support. Curtis Fleming is there on the edge of the area. Fleming for Craig Hignett. Hit it, Higgy. Higgy hits the treble!
Ravanelli coming alive again. Juninho wants the ball played to him. Ravanelli spots out Emerson!
Hello and welcome to the Boro Breakdown podcast with Johnny, Dana, Tom and Matt. This is the Boro Breakdown podcast that gives you all the Boro match day chatter in a podcast. And well, this is the season review show. The 23-24 season is now done and dusted. Boro finished the season over a 3-1 win over Watford, 8th in the Championship, semi-final of the Carrick Cup, and Sam Greenwood waved the Boro fans on. What a season, what a moment, and what a time to be alive. But guys, as we do every podcast, we do the one key takeout. And this time I want to do it for key takeout for the season. So Dana, what is your key takeout for Boro season?
I'm going to approach this as basically what I have learned from this season. And what I have learned, there's many things. But I'm going to focus on that squad depth is really, really important. And this isn't a startling new revelation. It's merely a reminder because Boro have had to contend with a lot of unavailability this season, be it through injuries, suspensions, Asia Cup. And honestly, I just wonder, and I don't have a definitive answer to this, but I just wonder if the quality of our squad depth was better, would Boro have fared better? Because there's certain positions, particularly on the left, actually, left back, you've got three players there in Engel, Bangura, and remember at the beginning of the season, Hayden Coulson. Is the quality there? Left wing. We know that the quality is there with Riley McGree, but with Sam Greenwood and Sammy Silvera, are they good enough depth options? Up front as well, sparse options in terms of Josh Coburn, even Latte Lath, there was question marks over whether he was good enough. Midfield as well. Like Dan Barlaser, I think he's a good player in his own right. But in regards to this system, particularly how teams respond to how we play, the high press, is he suited to that? So last summer, I think the recruitment team learned a big lesson on not relying on loans. And credit to them for that. But I think this summer, I reckon they'll be looking to learn from bringing in so many players that need a lot more time to adapt to the championship than the usual typical championship pro. So yeah, the one of the takeouts from the season that I want to focus on is that squad depth, really, really important, and the quality of it especially.
Good start. I'm going to go with you next, Tom. What's your key takeout for the season?
Yeah, man's nowhere near as in-depth as what Dana's just presented there, but man is... we're nearly there, in my opinion. We're not a million miles away in terms of being able to challenge. I think I said it on the last podcast, we need about 4 or 5 quality signings this summer to really challenge next season. As Dana's just alluded to there, I'm sure the recruitment team have kind of learned from this season in that to really challenge next season, we can't be signing people who need a long time to adjust to the league. It needs to be people who can make an impact straight away and an impact of real quality as well. That's not to say the recruitment team got things wrong this season or anything. I think compared to the season before where we had a lot of loans, we did need to bring in our own players. We did need to develop them. And I was saying from early in the season, it was probably going to click late in the season. We'd finish 7th or 8th. I'm not that happy to be right about it. I'd have preferred us to be finishing higher up, but I think we saw it with some of our players, Latte Lath especially. And, he can take that into next season and really build on that. And it'll look like we've got a couple of kind of like real gems on our hands with him and Rav van den Berg. We just need to continue to add this season. But I don't think we're too far off. And, some people might look at the league position this season and think, well, we're taking a step backwards. It kind of is, but it's not a huge step. maybe it was a necessary step to build for the future, as much as some people hate that phrase "build for the future," as we've learned in the last week. It might have been a necessary step. We couldn't just keep relying on loan players or kind of aging players season after season. It needed to be that we build. We've got quality options that, yes, they might take 6 months this season to get going, but next season they'll be completely set. You look at the likes of, say, the journeys Brentford and Brighton went on. They didn't just have kind of one summer window where it all suddenly clicked for them and they went up. It was a plan over time, and I think we're on a very similar kind of trajectory now. And I think it's going to be in the next season or the one after that we eventually do see the fruits of that and do go up.
And then for you, Matt, how would you find things as well? Because I see like there's a common theme here on squad depth, giving things time. Where do you think you stand?
Well, I was going to say that change takes time, and a lot of players have needed time to bed in and really find their place in the squad. And we're starting to see a lot of them players really come to the fore now and play really well. Finnezaz, Latilaf, Rav Vandenberg, Alex Gilbert. There's so many, even players that were already here, Matt Clark. There's so many footballers in this team that have grown and improved over the season. So I think that's one point. But for me, I think it's that we've got a foundation now. I think it's not quite a transition season, but I feel like we've spent this season being patient and getting the foundation right to hopefully kick on. And I'm like looking around the rest of the championship, and I'm looking at other clubs that are maybe entering that overhaul process that we've just gone through. I think Hull are entering it with the loans they're going to lose. Obviously, they need a new manager as well now, weirdly. I feel like looking around us, there's a lot of other clubs where there's not as much harmony. They've got quite a few things that are up in the air. I think Boro are in a position where things are stable. The foundations are set. We've got a manager who is happy to be here. We've got players who have found their feet. We can be in a position now where we can only add and build on what we've got. And I think that the sky should be the limit for the Boro team now. We should be able to just continue to progress in the trajectory. Should hopefully only be upwards. So it's been a tough season. We've had to be patient at times. We've had to endure some pretty bad periods. But I think we can come out of it positive that we have built the foundations of a team that hopefully can only improve and will hopefully go up the table. And that should hopefully inevitably mean a playoff push at the very least.
Yeah, and look, I kind of echo all your thoughts on time and players bedding in, but I feel like mine is just I've mentioned it on the pod over like the last few weeks, but just a season of what ifs. Like, what if we started much better than we did? It couldn't have been any worse. What happens if we did the double over Rotherham rather than I'd just beat Rotherham? I think if anything would have made the difference. Better. What if we had better results against the bottom 8 when the team we should be beating? But very very typical Boro in me is we always beat the good teams but never beat the shit teams. And the last and the last one is around the injuries. We had 10 to 14 injuries for most of the season. Key players out, that obviously feeds into depth. But can you really plan ahead and have those and have really good depth when you've got that many players out injured? You're sitting a lot of people out in that time as well. And also it comes down to in-game stuff as well. What happens if we created, or we're not created, we scored the chances we created. And, we were underperforming for a lot of the season, missing really good chances. Games could have changed. When I think there's a game where I just think of a laugh missing 3 1-on-1s. And you're thinking, well, what happens if we scored those? Would the games have been better there?
Referenced again. That's been referenced 3 times in the last 3 pods. Poor Latte. Yeah, we do love him.
We do. I'm going to comment on him a little bit later on. But, there's this key moments. Or Isaiah Jones missing from 0.5 yards at Huddersfield, and there's so many if buts and maybes, and game state obviously matters in those as well. But I think it's just for me, it's been one of those seasons where you think, one, I'm kind of glad it's over a little bit, but 2, I semi enjoyed watching the growth of different players come in the team, and also probably from Michael Carrick as well. I feel like he's probably learned a lot in the last year, how to manage different situations, how to manage them better. You know, he's probably learned a lot from those first 8 games where we tried to tweak things and it didn't really work out. But we'll come on to that in a moment, because I wanted to segment this podcast into five segments and say Boro's slow start, I think, is a key one. That September or October part where we decided to, turn the lights on and actually play some decent football. The period, January transfer window, and then obviously the latter part of the season and the good form, which saw Boro come very close to the playoff places. But the start of the season then, because we were very much rock bottom. We were rock bottom at one point, and it started off with a defeat to Millwall where we got beat 1-0, and then we had a defeat to West Brom in match day 4, and it was actually our worst season until 2003, 2004, which I genuinely thought we were going to win the Carabao Cup at one point, because it was emulated so much. But we didn't register a win until 23rd of September against Southampton. But then looking back, why do you think, and you probably alluded to this at the start about players bedding in, but why do you think Boro's season started so poorly?
I think we just struggled to adapt massively. The players, obviously, has been referenced, the new signings, but also Michael Carrick struggled to adapt to those new signings. I don't think we need to get into the numbers of how Boro set up. 4-2-4 was mentioned quite frequently on our early pods, but basically you look at the differences, and not every difference is negative, but in this case I do think it was, and it was basically the way that Lucas Engel was operating on that left hand side. He wasn't getting past the halfway line. And you know what? That can be fine so long as there's width elsewhere. And I know we spoke many times in the first few pods of the season about how narrow Boro were. So tactically, I do think Carrick tried to change things basically in response to not having Ryan Giles in particular. He was the core of our creative process essentially, and changed that 4-2-3-1 into a 3-2-5. I know I mentioned that I'm not going to talk about numbers, and I've just mentioned that, so sorry. But then you're looking at the way that Boro is setting up further afield as well, and you've got forwards that are coming inside. We always know that with the left winger, whoever plays there, they're going to come in central, but that was happening on the right as well. And it just made Boro too predictable, far too predictable. There was no fullback outlet, the lack of width from the wingers as well. Everyone was coming into the middle of the pitch. So we were too narrow. It made us too predictable and far too easy to play against. Results obviously weren't going for us, and we just looked off as well. Like, we looked significantly reduced in quality in the way that we were approaching the game. So I think Carrick did struggle at the beginning of the season to basically adapt to the changeover of players and personnel that he had at his disposal. And I think if he maybe looks back at the beginning of the season, potentially he would look at basically just the lack of wide options there to provide an outlet for Boro if we're coming up against a bit of a low block and a compact team. So I do think that adapting period was a big struggle for us and absolutely contributed to that massive slow start of the season. And looking towards next season, hopefully that's not as substantial, basically. So yeah, I think that adaptation process was just really slow and really difficult, not only for the players but for Carrick as well.
Yeah, and it's the recruitment side of things as well. And we do a lot. We do the lowdowns every summer and sometimes in January as well. It depends how active we are in that. But we noticed a profile where Boro recruiting dribbly boys, really. Instead of like getting someone who's going to whip the ball in the box, it was very much, let's bring players in. How do they get us up the pitch? What are the ball carriers? Like, you're looking at Morgan Rogers, Sammy Silvera was identified at that point as well as a player who would try and dribble the ball in the box. And we've seen that from those early stages. It was like you were saying, that then quite narrow, but trying to be too intricate in those moments. And at the end, it all just takes as a team to sit in that low block, compact the defense, as you should really in football. And it made Boro just scream for outlet. Engel pushing out that left hand side, putting the ball in. It might have made the difference, but it didn't. And Boro found themselves like staring on the barrel at one point in El Crapico against Sheffield Wednesday. But Matt, does it really show? Like, obviously Dan alluded to it there, like a lot of incomings, Carrick trying to tweak things, maybe trying to run before he could walk with the players that he's brought in. But Did it show the downside of having so much change within a squad that Boro just weren't clicking at the early stages?
Yeah, definitely. There was not only a massive turnover, but there was also a quite a large drop in quality as well. I think we were sort of expecting, I know certainly some fans were as well, expecting the signings we made to come straight in and click into the system and also provide the quality that we had prior as well, which was never going to happen. So yeah, it was a tough period for us. There was obviously a number of games where we struggled. Obviously, Millwall, we didn't score. Coventry away, we didn't score somehow. We had Morgan Rogers up front that day as well, which just goes to show how we were. I think the first title of our opening pod was Square Pegs in Round Holes. I think that sort of said it all. We were trying to shoehorn players into positions and didn't quite know, who was going to work where. And it was just a case of just taking time for the players to adjust and I guess Carrick to see their true strengths and weaknesses. But yeah, we struggled. We struggled to score goals. We didn't score on QPR as well. We lost 2-0 to them. I think that was their first away win in wasn't probably far off the calendar year at that point as well. So it just felt like, as well as it being a tough transition process for us, everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong. Both going forwards and backwards. We were also pretty poor defensively as well. We just looked so wide open, especially on the transition teams were just running straight through us. I remember against West Brom, John Swift picked the ball up and literally ran through Boro's midfield and defence. I think Schmodic did it for Blackburn as well. So yeah, it was a tough period, I think, both going forwards and going backwards as well. So just one of the periods where you just have to hold your nerve, not panic too much, and just hope that it clicks at some point. But yeah, it was certainly a period. I hope we don't have to go through ever again with, like I said, I alluded to at the start, the ability to now build on that squad. Hopefully we won't have to go through such an overhaul like that again. Because yeah, it was a pretty crazy time, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, it was. I remember us sitting next to each other and just going, what actually is going on? We're at that point, we were just looking at each other stunned, weren't we, Matt?
Remember Dazelle arrowing one at the top corner? We were right behind it, weren't we? And I just thought...
That was a good goal, to be fair. But when it comes against you, it's just so irritating to see that ping into the top corner, isn't it? Andre Dazelle as well, who's had a really poor season for 2 clubs.
It's where the XG compilation started, the low XG, when we were just teams were just scoring from absolutely everywhere, and you sat there just thinking, what could possibly go, what more could go wrong at this point?
Yeah, and you couldn't really, obviously, when you're looking at, obviously we do talk about numbers at times, but we're looking at the games going, well, Boro, they're getting into the areas at some point, but they're just not versus other teams in the league. They're getting in the right areas, but they're just not converting the chances. And then the other way, conceding worldies left, right, and centre. But that compilation video, Matt, is just fantastic. Just how many goals we've conceded this year when we probably shouldn't have conceded them. But that's football, as Grant famously once said. But Tom, a lot is said around the start of the season and Boro's playoff hopes and why we didn't achieve it. Do you think that slow start, no wins in the first few games, was probably the most impactful part of Boro's season in terms of not achieving a playoff place?
It's definitely a big contributing factor. I wouldn't say it's necessarily the only one. I was just having a quick look at the table there. If we'd have managed to beat the worst team in the league in Rotherham, home and away, we'd have been in 6th place, and that additional 5 points would have had us finishing 1 point above Norwich. So there's that, but this run at the start of the season, it probably had more of an impact in us not finishing, 5th and above, and getting into the playoffs comfortably. So it's a big contributing factor of missing out on the playoffs, but not the only one. I think you mentioned it earlier, not picking up points from the bottom 8. That is, especially at home, some of the most prime opportunities you have to pick up points, and we didn't take it. So I'd say that's equally as big a factor.
Yeah, and those factors all add up, isn't it? I think it's very easy to say there's one result that defines a season, and sometimes it can. I think it's accumulation of what ifs, and not beating QPR, at home is a difficult one, because Gareth Ains with QPR were pish. They're not they weren't the best side in the world, were they? Do you know what I mean? So, and you're conceding goals against them, and the Millwall game at the start of the season, you thought these look relatively okay, but they're not going to really kick on this year.
Not
it was different.
Not beating Neil Warnock's Huddersfield at home.
Exactly. So there's
made that so much more difficult than it needed to be.
It took a Hackney wonder strike, didn't it, for us to level it?
Yeah.
I remember ranting at the start of the season after that game saying, why are we showing so much respect to a Neil Warnock Huddersfield team at the Riverside?
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
And that as well, though, like it comes from confidence as well. Like when we think of those first few games, people are bending in, you're getting beat, and the players getting some grief, which it is football. They're going to get it, and it can all add up to people doubting themselves, playing safe, playing sideways, and you'll hear some from the crowd going backwards, just proper shouting it, and me and Matt are very aware of where we sit. There's a number of conversations that go on around like that, and players that don't even play for Middlesbrough, like Aidan McGeady. But anyway, for return. And Finn Aziz. But it turned a corner, though. We had to turn a corner at some point. And I'm going to ask you what your rock bottom part of the season was a bit later on in the show. But in terms of September, October, we did turn things around with that six game win streak. We had to beat Southampton. It was a really big game at the time. I remember going to see him and thinking, well, I think we might get beat. But it was very typical Boro to beat them. Especially when Southampton at the time were getting loads of random stats by the tacticals on Twitter saying they had 1,000 passes or something in a game and all that kind of crap. But anyway, doesn't really matter, does it? Sometimes. And we beat Sunderland where we were formidable in that one, and Sam Greenwood waved the Borough fans on. We have 3 consecutive clean sheets as well until Jonathan, and then we nearly got to 4 with Jonathan Rowe's 99th minute consolation, again from a very low XG chance, Matt. Dana, how would you reflect on that part of the season? Because that was where things started to click, things got a little bit better, momentum was starting to get there, and people, and the data is always starting to show that Boro were now getting a bit better.
Yeah, I reflect on this with sadness that it wasn't the turning of the corner that I thought it would be. Because, as you said there, clean sheets, almost 4 in a row, which they've been hard to come by this season, clean sheets. And a lot of criticisms have been levelled at the defence. That was probably the point in the season, because you think of that September, October, where I thought, okay, we're cooking on gas now. This is what I expected from Boro. We are winning. I wouldn't say we were playing at anywhere near full capacity. Just revisiting my notes, it was really the Southampton game stuck out as a real net positive in terms of a performance. The rest of them had their peaks and troughs, I guess, in terms of how we played in that game. But I really thought, I hoped that would be basically where we set aside that really poor start to the season, and then we ascend from there, with obviously dips because we're in the Championship. So you're going to have those periods where you maybe struggle a little bit. But I thought that was where Boro were just going to turn that corner fully. And we never did, because then we got beat by Stoke after that. Then drew against Plymouth, and okay, yeah, we beat Leicester at home, which was brilliant. But then our form just became really inconsistent after that. Got beat by Bristol City, of course. When do we ever win at Ashton Gate? We just don't, do we? That's one for the bold predictions next season. Then we beat Preston. Then we had a run of 3 consecutive defeats. So it's that was good in the moments that we were obviously seeing Boro win, but it didn't stick. And that's the frustration of it, is that with the narrative of Boro season, the inconsistency really hindered us, mostly because of course, other issues that Boro really couldn't contend with in regards to unavailability. And I mean, could they contend with it? I guess the inquest has probably long been going on in regards to how Boro have managed to run into this problem with unavailability. But yeah, I'm really disappointed reflecting back on this season, because it was everything that I hoped from Boro in the early part of the season that just didn't stay. It just didn't stick around. So although it was good at the time, disappointing that ultimately it was just a one period of the season that then changed and almost become a flip opposite of itself very soon after.
There was some high points though, and I'm thinking 4-0 Sunderland. I'm thinking this voice note or voice moment is a key part of it as well.
To be honest, waving the Boro fans on. He's a Sunderland fan. Best game in 2 games for Boro, and he's waving the Boro fans on. He's supposed to be a Sunderland fan. What an absolute joke, disgrace. I'm not happy at all with this, like. Fucking shocking.
Fucking shocking.
Shocking.
Love it.
At all with that. But Tom, I'm assuming out of all those games in the winning run, that was probably the one that you were most impressed with, or is there's another game in mind?
I mean, most impressed with. I'd probably have to say one of the clean sheets at that point for being impressive, because we weren't doing it until that part of the season. Personal highlights and high point, yeah, it was the Sunderland game. I turned down the chance to go to that game. One of my mates at work was saying, do you want me to get you a ticket? I was like, no, I don't think I can take it. It's like, we've not been playing well enough at the start of this season for me to be confident that we're going to go to Sunderland and not get absolutely battered, and I'm going to hate being in that stadium. No, absolutely not. And then I'm sat watching it around my uncle's up the road. First half was, quite even and, got a bit feisty at times. And then there's a red card, and just the way we were able to capitalise on that in the second half. Whether or not it was a red card or not, and we're not going to debate that because ultimately it was, and we had a dodgy decision against us last season as well, which I feel like has kind of more than evened out now, so we'll probably get fucked over next season. But, we were able to really take advantage of that man advantage. And also what I would say is that another contributing factor in that game, Mowbray's tactical changes for the second half were a bit baffling, which obviously gave more of an advantage to us as well. But given the low kind of confidence that we seemed to have at the start of the season and not doing a lot right, the fact that we were able to capitalise as well as we did at the time, I was absolutely ecstatic after that result. So yeah, high point for me was that. But yeah, probably more impressed by the fact that we were able to start keeping clean sheets at that point.
Yeah, and you can always build on them, can't you? And you can definitely, when you're not conceding, you can definitely say you've got a chance in a game. But I felt for me that result was an early Christmas present, because it just filled me with so much joy. But speaking of the festive period, it was, I don't know, it was very difficult, wasn't it? Because, one side of things really good in the cup. We had a fantastic moment by beating Chelsea at the Riverside. The flip side of it, we were absolutely garbage in the league. And normally you hear the cliche of a cup run can galvanise a league change or a bit of consistency in the league. And I do love a cliche, and I do love a Don Goodman impression from time to time if you ever listen to us on Pro Clubs. But I was going to ask you what your high point was, but I want to give you some feedback from our listeners as well. And they've said the high point of the season was the Chelsea at home game in the survey that we've had. Obviously followed by Sunderland. Obviously for a strong finish to the season, and also doing the double over Leicester. And there's some nice moments in there as well, which we'll come to a little bit later on. But is the Chelsea at home your high point of the season as well? Anyone else? What is everyone's high point?
It has to be that Chelsea game. Yeah, I mean, you go into that game just hopeful that Boro are going to put in a good performance, and if we win, it'll be the best thing ever, but we're not expecting it. But for Boro to go on and win that game and give themselves a genuine chance, it was the best thing ever to me on that night, because as we discussed in the pod afterwards, Chelsea are the only Premier League team that I haven't seen Boro beat. So to see that was everything that young little Dana that saw Giuliano Belletti pop a shot top corner from about fucking 60 yards wanted to see. Wanted to see that finally be avenged over those years. I mean, we also saw Brad Guzan get nutmegged 3 times in the Premier League season. So we've had some really bad memories. Obviously, predating my time supporting Middlesbrough, Boro fans will have a lot of memories against Chelsea that they don't want to remember. So to have one that we absolutely do want to remember and will remember, yeah, it was just insane. Like, after Hackney put that ball into the back of the net, the Riverside just absolutely erupted. And even like several minutes afterwards, it was just reverberating around the stadium, the outpouring of complete joy, like absolutely unbridled raw emotion there. And it was incredible. I love nights like that at the Riverside. Tottenham at home was another one. Chelsea at home is one that will stay forever. And I said after the game as well, doesn't matter what happens at Stamford Bridge, we'll always have that night. And of course, we got absolutely tonked off Chelsea. We deserve to get tonked off Chelsea in the next game against them. But who cares? We always have that home leg, and we'll always have that home leg.
Do you think
I remember. Sorry, Jen. I was just going to say. I remember when the Hackney goal went in. I literally had you. I just looked up and you were somehow on top of me. It was absolutely bedlam in the in the north. It was crazy, but it was definitely my high point of the season. I think we were going into it with no expectations whatsoever. I just wanted us to draw. I just thought just give ourselves a chance going back to Stamford Bridge. And I would not have expected us to win in our wildest dreams. I mean, to keep a clean sheet against Chelsea as well was something else that was unthinkable. So, to win that game in the manner we did and give ourselves a lead going into the second leg, it was the ultimate dream scenario, wasn't it? So, that's definitely a night that'll live forever in the memory.
I think when that goal at the back of the net, the lad next to me, I've not seen him before that season. I've not seen him after. So it was clear he was kind of only there for one game, but he was filming a TikTok as it went in. And I'm pretty sure I am immortalised in someone's TikTok from that moment. I've never actually seen it. But he grabbed me, I grabbed him. I'm like, get ahead. So, yeah, it might be floating around on TikTok somewhere. But, one-on-one.
Oh, we need to find that.
Yeah, we do. I mean, you don't want to find a TikTok of me on top of Matt by the sound of it. To be honest. That's what you definitely don't want.
Out of context, Boro Breakdown.
Oh, absolutely out of context, but the listeners enjoyed that one. But on the flip side, though, Dan, do you think the cup run itself, do you think that was a bit of a double-edged sword for Boro?
Yeah, it was quite conflicting actually when I think about it, because it did prop up our results when we couldn't buy a win in the league. You're thinking about the Huddersfield game and the Bolton game. That all came within that period where Boro couldn't register 3 points in the Championship. But then we did run into a period around the turn of the year where it really tested the squad. I remember that opening FA Cup game, the first round game against Villa. We all just kind of thought, do we have to? Because we had so many injuries. And that was, of course, after the call-ups to the Asia Cup for Riley McGree and Sammy Silvera. And I know that Seny Dieng also got called up to the African Cup of Nations, but he was injured anyway. But do you remember Port Vale away? Latte Lath had to come off because he tweaked his hamstring. Jones came on, felt his hamstring, then went off. Crooks got injured as well, Rogers too. And thankfully all those players bar Latte Lath did play the following game against West Brom. But you're having to bring on a player that's not 100% fit off the bench to replace someone who's also not 100% fit, to then have to take him off because he's not 100% fit. It was ridiculous. And then, as I said, we had that Villa game just 5 days after we scraped a squad together against Coventry on New Year's Day, in which the oldest player on the bench was 24-year-old Alex Bangura. It was good for confidence. And, as we discussed just then, the Chelsea game was incredible. But in that game as well, Latte Lath goes off injured, and so does Alex Bangura within the same half. And both were out for a substantial period of time as well. So, yeah, it maybe wasn't, in terms of the build-up of fixtures, something that Boro would have necessarily welcomed from that perspective. But I think games like Chelsea do give you the opportunity to just galvanise the whole, not even just the club, the whole town, to get behind Boro, to perk up that confidence. And, I mean, it did. That happened. It then got knocked down to the floor when we got tonked off them at Stamford Bridge. But I do think it was very double-edged. good on one hand that, you know, we mounted a little bit of a cup run there. Let's be honest, we got a favourable run of fixtures. I mean, God, when Port Vale got drawn out, I thought, Jesus Christ, we're in luck here. We are going to win the cup. But then, yeah, the amount of injuries that we had to contend with in that period was just, I don't think those fixtures necessarily helped that.
Yeah, and well, in terms of fixtures of really trying to bring people back down to earth, bar the Chelsea result, probably Rotherham away, I would say. The cross come shot into the top corner. And how did we just not beat Rotherham? It's kind of like the open question I'm going to have for you is, how the fuck did we not win against those? And one, that goal as well, and just like, I think we got beat, I think, with an XG of 0.03 against Rotherham in that game. So, I mean, how should I look on that front, to be honest, but how didn't we beat Rotherham?
I think it's like karma for signing two of their best players in the last few years. I think maybe we sign over that piece of our soul when we sign Crooks and Barlasser, as well as giving them the money for it. Just like, right, we're going to get your best players, but we're not going to beat you for forever. And I think it's the same kind of thing with their what's the right word? Their other personality side, Barnsley. Like, we just never seem to do well against them either. So it must just be somewhat related to that. But
they are two sides of the same coin, them two clubs, aren't they?
I'm really looking forward to League One next season because I'm finally going to see Rotherham versus Barnsley like in the same place at the same time. I thought they were just the same team, just in a different kit. But yeah, I have no idea because I remember coming away from that game at the Riverside, and I've said on here, if I was a Rotherham fan, I'd be very worried for the season because they were absolute dog shit. And, you know, they finished bottom and they deserve to finish bottom because they looked a horrendous team. Just for some reason, had our number. Probably Jordan Hugel or Karma or something like I say. We'll probably sign Johansson off them as a backup now and then, you know, never beat them again for another 10 years. So who knows?
I went there and it was my first away game in 2 years since we got battered 4-1 at Sheffield United. Well, that's it. My away record is notably bad. And I went there thinking, this is a tap-in. It's Boxing Day. They're absolutely awful. Surely this is the day we finally beat Rotherham. And I see us win an away game in the league. And I just couldn't believe how typical it was that we had the most blatant penalty disallowed. Bangura was absolutely floored by one of their defenders. I don't know how it wasn't given. And when they scored from a cross, part of me couldn't believe my eyes, but another part of me was just, I conceded to that. This is just the way it is. That's, of course, they concede from a cross. And I just knew from that point, we are not going to score. It doesn't matter if we get an open goal, we are going to find a way of losing this game. And my winless away run of watching Boro in the league would continue. So part of me was in disbelief after that result, but then part of me just accepted that this was my fate as a Boro fan. So it was just one of the most surreal away days I've ever been to in my life.
Have you seen us win yet, Matt, away?
Once, and it was in the FA Cup, was it? And it was when we went to Old Trafford, and I didn't even get them tickets. You guys remember? Mm-hmm. It was when I messaged you guys, and I think that was how I got in touch with Dykesteel's dad. No, Dykesteel's dad ended up DMing me on Twitter because he watched the podcast, and good old Stephen Dykesteel messaged me, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I've got a couple of free tickets. Do you want them?" And I was like, "Is this fake?" He was like, "Yeah, I'll give you my WhatsApp." And I was like, "Okay, this is dodgy." And then all the way down to Manchester, I was like, "Am I actually going to meet up with Dykesteel's dad?" And then I did outside the ground, and he's a double of Anthony. And he was like, "Yes, Dykesteel's dad, just come over." And he's like, "Yeah, there you go. Enjoy the game." And I was like, "Okay."
God, that's my favourite story ever, that, by the way. My absolute favourite story. I just remember Matt was like, you could sense the anxiety coming off Matt because he was like, is this real? Is this legit? Like, is that actually Dykesteel's dad? And it was. That was, oh, what an amazing. Yeah. Big up Dykesteel's dad, by the way, for that. That was really nice.
Yeah, and we won on pens, and the entire way and just kept chanting "Sue" every time Ronaldo would like make a mistake or misplace a pass or something. So it was the greatest like away day scenario in all of context, but that's the only time I've ever seen us win away ever.
And you know what? Maybe you peaked there, Matt. Maybe that story in itself is pretty much. You should have went. You know what? I'm never going to see a better away day than this, and just never went again. But now you get beat every time we go. So you're probably the reason why we haven't made the playoffs this year. To be honest, Matt. To be honest, I didn't want to skip around it. I didn't want to upset you, but
probably
the reason why.
Yeah,
probably the reason why. But I know, Matt, obviously, Matt, you were there and you watched us get beaten. Obviously, we can't just pin the blame on Matt for not being able to beat these bottom 8 teams, Dana. But why do you think we've struggled against the likes of Rotherham, likes of Plymouth, etc.? Why do you think we've really struggled?
I think as kind of a blanket theme, a lot of those sides do play quite a compact system against us because they probably know that Boro are going to struggle to break that down. And I think at times we have really struggled coming up against a low block because we don't circulate the ball quick enough. Sometimes we don't choose the right passes. I mentioned a couple of podcasts ago about how Boro could basically negate a low block. And in fairness, I neglected to mention that Boro did actually do the things that I was mentioning, the big switch. We saw it with Matt Clark. However, there was one moment where, I know we were just talking about Dykesdale, Matt Clark pinged a ball out to Dykesdale and he completely miscontrols it and it goes out for a throw-in. So it's like little things like that. The quality's just off when it needs to not be off because essentially you are playing for percentages in those games. You are trying to find those little pockets where you can attack the other team because otherwise it's not a very spacey area really when you do come up against that low block. So yeah, Boro were playing that big switch. They were trying to pull players out into wide areas, the central midfielders, to create numerical advantages. But I just think that too many times this season, the balls have either been like the distribution of passes have either been too slow or not good enough in terms of the actual pass selection, the pass type. There's been a lot of games this season where I've kind of come back from it saying our passing was abysmal today. The way that we retain the ball, look after it, I think has been against those teams, especially that do come up to try to frustrate Boro, pretty poor. And again, what we've mentioned about set pieces quite frequently on this podcast, not just this season, but in previous seasons as well. When you do come up against a side that in open play are going to just shut the door on you, you need to make sure that from set pieces, you are pretty strong. And set pieces are overrated because not a lot of them actually end up in the back of the net. And there's a lot of things that do weigh into a successful set piece. Sometimes the ball could be really good into the box, but it's just not attacked very well. But yeah, whenever I see Boro come up against a side that try to frustrate them, I'm looking at set pieces as the avenue to basically exploit a potential avenue to score. And we just never seem to be good enough from set pieces, unfortunately. So coming up next season, I think just generally the quality has to be better in regards to trying to break down that low block, be quicker with the ball, try to play that switch a little bit quicker, just be quicker, basically. Not in terms of running, just in terms of, thinking ahead. And I think Finn Azaz is going to be really important to that next season, by the way, because he's somebody that I think sees the pitch before it's been taken. And that's kind of what we were told by Argyle Life when we reviewed his signings. So I think he's going to be really important, but he can't do it on his own. So yeah, Boro next season, I want to see us be quicker, and I want to see us try to disrupt that low block because that is why I think Boro have struggled this season.
Yeah, well, in terms of set pieces, then don't you worry. Over 90% of set pieces actually don't end up in the back of the net. So there you go.
Tell Don Goodman that, Johnny. Tell Don Goodman that.
Wow, I can't give Don Goodman that much room in in the commentary box. And but it's good to set piece. A set piece, it's as good as a goal. As Don famously once said. But you mentioned Finn Azaz, Dana. He came in January with the two Lukes of Luke Ayling and Luke Thomas, and then we said goodbye to Morgan Rogers, which here for a minute and we sell them for 16 million. And then we lost the tree in Matt Crooks. Obviously, Matt Crooks came on the podcast as well after he left the club. And if you haven't watched that episode, do go and find it. If you want to listen to it on the podcast provider, you can, or watch it on our YouTube channel. We've also got an episode with Tommy Smith there as well. But Tom, how would you assess Boro's January business?
It's all right. Finn has grown into it throughout the last few months. I think he did show flashes early on of what he could do, but then had a few games, I would say, where it did still seem like he was finding his feet in the side. I think towards the end of the season, though, I don't understand the people who were saying, like, who were maybe questioning him or like slagging him off a little bit. I think he's going to be very important for us next season. I think you can see when the ball comes to his feet, he knows where he wants to go with it, or he can spot a run from someone a lot quicker than what we've had at earlier points this season. I think he is going to be a really big player for us next season. Luke Ayling as well. I was not too excited about this signing when we made him in January. I thought it's going to be a solid option at right back, which was an area that we'd struggled in injury wise throughout the season. I didn't expect him getting 3 less assists than Giles in his time here, and obviously it looks like he's on his way on a permanent. That's a good pickup for me, and one that will be important next season. Luke Thomas, on the other hand, is dead to me after missing that one-on-one last week, where he let my bet builder down, where I'd have probably had a pretty decent cash out for the grand total that it was on. I had Luke Thomas to get a yellow card or to score, and he did neither. And honestly, when he got through one-on-one, I was just like, just put it near post, just beat the keeper, and he somehow managed to mess that up. So good riddance. Glad he's gone back to Leicester, but yeah, not a good start for Luke Thomas. I will say he looked genuinely dreadful in the first few games. He did pick up after that. To give him his dues, he did get better, but he's not one I'm bothered about coming back next season. I think we've got better here, so I'm happy he's gone back.
Yeah, I mean, no love lost for Luke Thomas there at all. But there is a lot of love from the Perrys, Dana and Tom, around Finn Azaz. And Matt, do you think we've seen the best out of him yet, or do you think there's more to come? Or Finn Aziz, as we tend to know him by in the North Stand.
Yeah, if you speak to the guy who's 3 rows behind me and Johnny, it's very much Finn Aziz, who is one of Boro's new signings. But I don't think we have, and I think that's a really exciting prospect. I agree with Dana completely in terms of he could be integral next season for us. I think when it comes to breaking through these lower end sides who might put up a bit of a low block in front of us, I think he could be key in sort of unlocking their defences and maybe edging tight games in our favour. But yeah, he's an outstanding player. I think he got double for assists and goals this season. Maybe even in the top 5 for overall goal contributions in the Championship. I think he's an outstanding signing. I think the fact we got him in on the 5th of January, really early on as well, it was a good bit of business from Boro to get him through the door quickly, and was definitely, I think, the standout transfer for us, and one of the standout transfers in the Championship in January. To be honest, I was delighted when we brought him in. So yeah, I think we're already seeing little flashes of what he can do, and the idea of him improving even more really, really excites me next season. So he's another one of them players who has took a bit of time to get up to speed, but I think next season could be absolutely crucial. And if he plays to his full potential with Lath in front of him and some real high quality players around him, then our attack might be looking pretty good next season. So I'm very excited to see the best of Finn Azaz, which is yet to come.
Yeah, and before we move to like the latter part of the season, Dan, I feel like it's only right that I mention Matt Crooks and give you this question because he did depart Went to the US of A, and Morgan Rogers as well, going to Aston Villa and thriving there in the Premier League as well. And do you think Boro got good deals for the pair of them? But also, how much do you miss Matt Crooks?
Oh, I miss Matt Crooks immensely. I just tried to stick his face on my laptop, but he fell off. So he said no there. But yeah, I mean, I was told 1 million for Crooks. I'm very indifferent in regards to whether that's a good deal or not, because yeah, I'm just sad that he left. It probably was time for him to go. It's a big opportunity for him to move abroad to America, new challenge. So I don't blame anyone for him going. And we did bring in the aforementioned Finn Azaz in his position, so that's definitely an upgrade, even though I do maintain the opinion that Matt Crooks was and would have been an impactful player for the Borough. Rogers, I mean, we've already made over 1 million on that deal with an add-on included in it in regards to appearances for Aston Villa, so there's definitely more to come from that. So yeah, good deal financially. But aside from that, I was sad to lose both of them because I think they would have made a difference. Would they have made the difference? Probably not in regards to like pushing Boro into the top 6. But there's definitely a question to be posed there, because Morgan Rogers in particular was definitely, I wouldn't say he was quite there yet in regards to showing us everything that he could offer, but he was definitely getting up to speed. And we saw him game by game gradually start to influence things more. So I was sad to see him go, mostly because it was that potential that we didn't quite fully crack, and Villa will be the club that will see that potential be tapped into. So financially, it is what it is in regards to the deals, but disappointed to lose 2 players that I think could have been influential for Boro in the latter part of the season.
Yeah, and on the Rogers deal as well, you know, I think it's been a well-structured deal. The board got 8 million up front, and then obviously you got the add-ons there, and then, you know, sort of the end deal, is it? You know, we've got the sell-on clause as well with Morgan Rogers. So if he does come good, you know, you're talking hopefully about 20 plus million you're going to get for Morgan Rogers in a deal we only paid less than $1 million for as well. So I think it's fantastic business for Boro. And you've seen the development he's already having already for Aston Villa, and I appreciate he's just got injured, hasn't he? But he's been really good, and you can kind of see, wow, what a talent we had on our hands. But it's a shame to see him go, and I agree with that, Dana. And you never know, we might pick up another gem in the summer. I hope we do, and we can develop these further. And you know, at the end of the day, it's a business. We have to make money in the Championship, and we'll go from there. But we'll move on to the latter end of the season, and then we'll look ahead to next season and start to get to the really fun bit as well around our pre-season predictions and start to review those, because there are some absolute corkers. But we just finished the season with 1 defeat in 12. Obviously, the only defeat coming against Leeds. But Matt, you were on a lot of podcasts towards the end of the season as well. So what have you learned about Boro from the final stretch of the season?
That we're actually quite good. And I think we're starting to see the possible potential of this team. I think the players that we've brought in have grown, and if we can retain a lot of them, Rav Vandenberg being one, as well as the players who we didn't actually have for periods of the end of the season, like Hackney, McGree, players, you know, Force, you think, oh my God, we went 12 unbeaten. Well, 1 loss in 12. We shouldn't have lost it against Leeds because we had an incompetent linesman. But, you know, that team could get better. There is a lot of quality to still come in to that team as well. So not only do I think they've adapted well, and Carrick has adapted well to them, you know, he knows how to utilize them properly, and they've come into good form. We've got, I think, a 20-goal a season striker ready-made. I think a lot of teams will be scrambling around for one of them, like we were in the summer when we might have one already in-house. Yeah, the potential of this team is high, and there is a lot of quality still to come into it that we already have in the squad, and there's also the ability to add to it financially as well. So it's only whetted my appetite for next season quite a lot. And I know I said in a couple of podcasts, I'm trying my hardest to put a lid on my optimism for next season, because we all know which football club we're talking about here. But it's proven to me that not even our best squad is a very good squad and a good side who, you know, can put a lot of teams to the sword in this division. So there's no reason why, in an ideal world with a fully fit team, with more quality at full strength, could really do some damage in this league next season. And I'm going to shelve my optimism there before I get too carried away.
You get carried away, Matt. You know this is what the podcast's all about. I mean,
yeah.
So actually, you know what? You'll learn a valuable lesson in probably the next 5 minutes.
Wait till November.
What you should and shouldn't say. But then in that 12 game period though, we did tweak things slightly, and I think you'll see with Boro anyway. We tweaked a lot throughout the season to get the results we needed. But is there anything tactically you'd like to see from this season coming to the next season?
I really enjoyed seeing us have an outlet out wide, and specifically a fullback outlet in Luke Ayling. I don't care whether it's the left back or the right back. I think there's probably more emphasis on it being the left back just because of the amount of space that's afforded to them based on the left winger and how he approaches the game by coming inside. But I've really enjoyed seeing Luke Ayling specifically be a real creative outlet for us on that right-hand side. And I think going into next season, I do want to see that. And I want to see it from the start. Obviously, we referenced at the top of the pod about how Carrick really struggled to adapt. And I think he was maybe trying to overcomplicate things. But to get width out wide, I think is really good for us because it just gives us the opportunity to connect and to give Latilath that service in from deep or from the byline, wherever it may be. And I don't think Boro are yet developed into a forward line that's good enough to cut inside, shoot and score, or at least test the keeper. So, yeah, what I've enjoyed seeing is our right back in Luke Ayling get forward, put those crosses in the box for whoever's in there, be it Latilath, Finn Azaz. Next season, it could be a Hayden Hackney getting into the box late, which is something that I really wanted to see from him this season, but he's not really had much of a season, to be fair. So yeah, that's what I'd like to see. Just a fullback being our main creative force once again. I'm probably too attached to seeing Ryan Giles last season, but still, I think it's good to have that option out wide. You see it quite frequently in the Championship, where you've got the likes of Leif Davis at Ipswich, probably the prime example that comes into my head of somebody that, can be a real positive for a team, despite being a defender. Fullbacks are now modernised into being essentially wingers. So that's kind of what I want to see.
Wingers, centre mids, anything they want to be these days in the world of football, that can be. But yeah, like the tactical side of things as well. I just want to add as well, moving to a back three, I think was really interesting. It gave us a bit of confidence at the back, just to become a bit more solid, and then you can move back to the back four as things start to improve defensively in terms of shape and trying to see games out. But then also as well, like we talk about adding layers to a team, and the more outlets you have, the more problems a team is going to have in terms of defending you. Luke Ayling on the right hand side, Luke Sengel on the left, or Bangura. I think that's super helpful. Having the players that can move around in certain areas and cause people to get pulled away from positions is always super valuable. And I think we just, once we built that base again, I think strip things back and then started to build and build again. Things massively improved as the last few games went out, but it wasn't to be because Boro did miss out on the playoffs by 4 points in the end. Bloody Rotherham, but all things considered, shows we're not too far away with everything that went on this year, with all of the if buts and the defeats and the injuries and all that kind of stuff. We weren't that far away in the end. But has your guys' opinions changed on Michael Carrick at all? And what do you think, or how would you feel he's done this year as Boro boss?
I think my opinion of him has probably got higher this season. Obviously, he did an incredible job last season in turning our season around and getting us into the playoffs. This season, yeah, I think we were talking about it after the Chef Wed game, maybe, and I was really starting to kind of have my doubts at that point. We were talking about it on here, saying when a manager starts making decisions which are obviously wrong to fans, could be playing people in the wrong positions and stuff like that, and the fans are like, we can literally see the issue here. And doing it consistently, that maybe they're coming to the end of their time at a club, and I was getting worried around that point that we might kind of start again and go with someone else. And to be fair to the club, they've stuck with Carrick. Carrick stuck to his principles throughout that run of games and said we're not far off, which was not really well received by a lot of the fan base. Never mind all of the ones that I always heard on the BBCT's morning on the drives home. But we turned it around, and you look at the progress some of our players have made this season, and Carrick did have that kind of pedigree as a coach to bring players on, and obviously it was no one at Man United. But I would have to give a lot of credit to Carrick and the coaching staff for sticking to those principles and developing these players over the course of a season, where we've only just missed out on the playoffs eventually, and maybe if we'd have had that kind of team cohesion going into the season, we wouldn't even be sat here right now doing this podcast, because we'd be watching us in the playoffs, or we'd still be out celebrating after getting promoted last week. But yeah, I would say that over the course of the season, he's done enough to improve my opinion personally of Michael Carrick.
It's crazy to think that this is his first full season as a manager. That completely passed me by when I read it earlier on. I think he's done an admirable job in the end. It wasn't without its difficulties, and he hasn't been without criticism this season. I do think that he had enough credit in the bank to negotiate through tough periods with the fans backing mostly. I do think there were questions that arose around him probably at the beginning of the season, but mostly around that Stoke game where it looked like Boro just could not buy a win for love nor money, and it looked like we were maybe looking behind us. So I think Carrick has stuck to his principles, as Tom said, in regards to the style of play, but he hasn't been afraid to change the system. And we saw that ahead of the Norwich game. I'm going to be honest, the change in system didn't look like it was working until Johnny Howson got Borja sent off, because he actually thought we were really poor in that opening 30 minutes or so against Norwich. But it shows that Carrick, even if he's maybe a little bit slow to do so, that he will change things, and he'll try to turn things around by changing the formation, as we saw. So I've got a lot of respect for him for this season and everything that he's had to contend with. I mentioned on a previous podcast, I'm surprised that he hasn't gone grey or hasn't started thinning, because it must have been a really frustrating season for him, that essentially he hasn't had his full strength 11 out for probably any game this season. And if he has, it's not been for many games. So yeah, I'm really happy with Carrick in the end. And I loved what he said. This was a quote from him in the Northern Echo. He said that it felt like it was a little bit of an end of something last season, even if it was quite quick. Now it feels more like the start of something, and we need to keep building on that. I think that's absolutely spot on. It does feel like we're starting something rather than ending something. Like we're just kind of stepping onto the new fresh grass with all of the flowers blossoming. So it definitely feels like the start of something. And I'm happy to have Michael Carrick in charge. And if you heard that yapping dog, he also loves Michael Carrick. So Carrick gets a thumbs up from the Malt House and next door.
And, for me as well, I think to round it off, I think, unless Matt, you want to jump in after, but it's just I think he has enough in the bank anyway. I think regardless of what he's done, I think the playoff season was great. He's and the second year, this year now has been really good for him to develop. And I can understand why he's a bit slow sometimes. And in terms of like that in-game management, and I think it was similar to Carrick as well, where when you start off something new, you want to make the right decision straight away, and you want to be 100%, and you want to impact the game. And as that develops, and you start to make more decisions, you become more confident. And I think with that as well, you'll probably start to see Boro make the earlier change, and you need to become a bit more rash in certain moments, and that will come with time. I think you've got a young coaching group in Carrick and Jonathan Woodgate, but also Aaron Danks has been around for a while, but still relatively quite young, although very talented. And this coaching staff will probably continue to develop over this next season, and they'll probably learn more things. And I found that they're doing really good things this year. With everything that's went on, I think they've done a really good job, and I think they've got a good platform to build on next year. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we can do that. To be honest, I don't know if you share any of that, Matt, at all, or you can let me move on to the next part of the season.
Yeah, I have a lot of admiration for Carrick because I think for his first full season, he's had to overcome quite a lot of challenges this season. And I think to keep his head and to keep his level head as he has done throughout all the injuries and turn our form around on 2 separate occasions, it deserves a lot of credit for that. I think there have been times where I've doubted him as well. I'm not going to be afraid to say that. I've had question marks over him. I think sometimes, I don't know if it's stubbornness or just how slow he is to sometimes make decisions within games. And then, of course, there was a little bit of stubbornness with the system, but he changed it to a back 3, got sort of steadied the ship when I think, in my opinion, I started to panic a little bit around that Stoke game. And he turned the ship around on 2 separate occasions. So I think it's only going to be to our benefit that he's had a season like this, because I think he'll have learned so many things that he'll take into the following seasons to come, which will only help us as a club and as a team. So, yeah, as much as there's been challenges, they can only be turned into positives going forward. One caveat is we have to be careful because, according to Jamie O'Hara, he should be loaned to Manchester United for the rest of the season, which is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen, one of the worst football takes ever. But we have to be careful that Michael Carrick isn't an emergency loan for Jim Ratcliffe down at Old Trafford. So keep an eye on that one.
I mean, it was Jamie O'Hara saying that, so I mean, yeah, I think we're pretty safe on that one. But looking ahead to next season, before we come to our pre-season predictions, Tom Penny McNair and also Sam Greenwood as well have confirmed that they'll be leaving Boro, or Greenwood's case not returning next season. Do you think there'll be any other notable outgoings in terms of Boro?
I think if there is, it's only going to be for a high bid. I was at that Flight with the Moon Q&A with Steve Gibson a couple of weeks ago. He pretty much said that we were in a position where we didn't really have to sell, but we would sell if it was like a bid came in for silly money. For me, that would be like if someone bids 25 million for Hackney, or if my Football Manager game comes to real life and some Saudi Arabian team bids 40 million for Laugh, like that type of stuff, we'd probably entertain. But I think we're in a good position now where the core of the team probably won't be leaving, and then it's just going to be adding around that. So I don't see any other notable outgoings, but if we do have any, I'm sure that we'll probably bring in to compensate for that.
And for me as well, I think, and I kind of want to put this graphic up just because I feel like it could be the last time I ever do it. In this form, in this format, but Johnny's happy place where we had Dijksteel as the son when things were really bad at one point, and Dijksteel might be disappearing at one point, going somewhere else. So, who's going to take my happy place? Who's going to be back? And maybe Lucas Engel, who knows? Or Marcus Forss, who knows? We'll put someone in there, but just wanted to give Dijksteel a shout out there because I don't think we'll see him in a Boro shirt, unfortunately, next year. But in terms of next season, is there anything that you guys want to see from Boro next year from what you didn't see this season?
More home wins. I want to see 2 things from Boro next season, and it's more home wins, and the only team to be celebrating at the Riverside at the end of the season to be us and no one else.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's what I put down on mine. And I mean, our home form this season, we're 12th for points accumulated at home. It's in the could be worse category. But if you look at the teams that we've dropped points against, Gareth Ainsworth's QPR, who were pish, Johnny. I spoke to Clive in our opposition preview show, and I was kind of getting a giggle out of what he was saying, because it's that football pessimism that at least I can really relate to, being quite a pessimistic fan. And he was so down on their chances. He did not think that they were going up, that they were staying up. He thought that they were going down. Then Neil Warnock's Huddersfield, Stoke and Bristol City, who, if you were to predict the championship table in the middle of the summer, in the middle of the Euros, let's say, you would probably put them between like 12th and 16th. They're so middle of the pack, it's untrue. Rotherham failing to win against Rotherham. And then Plymouth as well. I was looking at this. That was their only win in 11 in that period. Foster then gets sacked, to Plymouth fans' joy. But then they've got that victory to say that, you know, we actually saw Ian Foster win a game as Plymouth manager before he left. Like, Boro were very charitable at the Riverside this season. That's definitely something that I want to see change. So I agree with Tom completely with that.
Yeah, I didn't actually consider that, but that's like one of the probably most obvious points. For me, it's just to have a consistent, strong squad. I got so frustrated so often this season. Every time we'd get one player back, we'd lose one for whatever reason. And we had so many interferences with the Asia Cup or whatever else was going on. I just want Carrick to just have the right tools available to him for the majority of the season. We're obviously going to get injuries from time to time, but I think everyone's in agreement that this year it has been absolutely ridiculous. And I'd like to think it's something we will never see on this scale again. So for me, I'd agree with that, but I'd also add that I just want us to have a consistently strong starting 11 and bench to pick from throughout the majority of the season, because I think we've seen that with that ability, well, with that available to us, we should, at least with the current squad we've got, be strong, never mind having hopefully a stronger squad after the summer.
Yeah, and I think for me as well, I would probably add and just say, Boro, to keep adding more layers to the creative aspect of it. I think, you know, we need to see probably more quality, I think, around the pitch. You know, every position for me is, if you can recruit better, you recruit better, and you put the person you have on the bench, unfortunately. And I don't think anyone's position is kind of cemented. I don't think, you know, although Last done fantastic this year, there's still develop. If someone came and went Johnny John Cameron Archer instead, I'd probably take Cameron Archer. You know, there's definitely better players out there, but if we can add to that, then brilliant. If not, then we'll see where things are. But we'll move on to probably this part of the show where everyone was really keen to to listen to, and it was our preseason predictions. You know, we had a number of questions, which we asked ourselves at the start of the season, and probably kicking things off was, where will Boro finish? Dana, where do you say Boro are going to finish?
Do I have to tell you?
You'd have to tell me.
I said second. I said that Middlesbrough Football Club would finish second.
And Tom, where did you say Boro are going to finish? Or does he want to answer it? I don't know.
He's too embarrassed.
I lagged there, so I said third. I'm assuming that's what you asked.
Maybe could have said anything there. To be honest, mate, could have asked anything, but in that round, could have. But I rounded things off and said fourth. So I mean, we're all well off, to be honest. So not a good start. We moved on to who's going up next. So Tom, you said Southampton, Leicester, and Boro via the playoffs. So Leicester have obviously got game promotion. Southampton, we never know. And Boro, well, you know, clearly can't happen. Dana, you actually followed in Tom's footsteps a little bit here. We said Leicester and Boro were going to get promoted, and then Southampton via playoffs. And then I finished it off and went, I didn't think we were going to get promoted this year, but I said that Leicester, Southampton, and Leeds are going to be our promoted teams. That's really sad that, you know, that I said the three teams that got relegated were going to get promoted. To be honest, it shows that Premier League is shit. The Championship's better anyway.
Championship's changed, mate. It's all about the big wigs in it and the parachute payment teams, isn't it? That's why I am thoroughly anti-parachute payment teams. I am a hater for any team that comes down. I'll be a hater for Burnley, Sheffield United, and Luton next season. Like, thoroughly hate watching them. So yeah, hopefully they just disappear.
Yeah, well, if you give Luton that amount of room, Dana, they might have that 13-goal swing and final day of the season to turn things around. But speaking of teams that are going down, I said QPR, Cardiff, and Sheffield Wednesday. Of course, none of them got relegated. But
Didn't realise that actually.
Cardiff, were actually the surprise pick, really, in terms of like how they improved the season. I think they improved the season. QPR and Sheffield Wednesday were dead and buried at one point, and then they've turned things around. But Danny, you went Rotherham, Sheffield Wednesday, and Plymouth. Plymouth had to take things to the final day, of course. Sheffield Wednesday were also final day, and Rotherham were just relegated at Christmas. And then Tom, for you as well, you pretty much follow me like for like here when QPR, Cardiff, and Sheffield Wednesday.
I can't believe neither of you said Rotherham. Like, Rotherham is surely anyone and everybody's pick for automatic relegation. Like, they're so destined to return to League One.
Unlike their alter egos, Barnsley, I've seen Rotherham pull off the Great Escape quite a few times.
Yeah.
So I was kind of going with that, and then the other teams just looked awful that I picked there. So
They did.
Yeah, I stuck by what I said at the start of the season, but ended up being straight predictions.
Yeah, and on those as well, no one really had expected Birmingham to get relegated this year. And, at the start of the season, they had, and then, look at them now, eh? And then they're in League One. On the rise again. But in terms of keeping with the surprises here, we had a surprise package. I'm going to come to you here and say what your surprise package was. I'll kick things off and say Bristol City. I thought if they got rid of Nigel Pearson, which they did actually this year, I thought they would come good. They had some good moments, but they were very Bristol City and finished mid-table. Tom, what was your surprise package for the season?
My surprise package was Neil Warnock's Huddersfield. Suppose that the only surprise they produced was getting 1-1 draw at the Riverside, but yeah.
It's not as bad as mine.
And Danny, what was yours? This could have been a good one if you kept your mouth shut after the name.
Yeah, it would have actually. I said Ipswich, but in a negative way. To be fair, my thinking was that they would do well, then Kieran McKenna would get poached by a parachute payment club, and that they would fall apart from there. As it was, Kieran McKenna did not leave. Ipswich were doing well and continued to do well and got promoted automatically. So that is a honking prediction of quite a few honking predictions in this preseason bunch, actually. So yeah, that was great.
Well, don't worry. There's more to come. We got Boro Young Player of the Year prediction and Boro Player the prediction and our bold predictions as well, which are even worse. So for Boro Young Player of the Year, when we predicted it, so this is not actually our Player of the Year, but I will come to that a little bit later on. But Tom, you went with Sammy Silvera, and now I can understand this because he had a really good preseason. Then you said Hayden Hackney, again, a fantastic shout. And I don't want to gloat a little bit here, but I said Hackney or Rav Vandenberg, who did get the Young Player of the Year for Boro as well. And that's as far as I can go in terms of saying things are a good prediction this year. But this one's a corker. For Boro Player of the Year, I went with Riley McGree. Because I think he's fantastic, and you know what, he will be fantastic, and still is fantastic, and I love him. Then he went with Hayden Hackney, and then Tom, what did you go with?
I went for Tuba Rakpom. Yeah, I saw that coming.
No, I feel like you need to give context here though as well at the time, because you did say if he stays, Tube Rackham will be Player of the Year.
I'm glad you said that, because I forgot that I ever said that. And that, to me, seeing it written down in a doc is just kind of like blind optimism from me that he was going to come back in from no preseason and just recreate the magic from the season before. And yeah, he ends up going to Ajax. And to be fair, still has a good season at Ajax. So I'm glad that at least Boro's managed to revive his career in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. You never know. It might come back next year. Doubt it. But in terms of the final one, I'm looking at this and going, bloody hell, these are shockers. So, bold predictions then. Do we want to reel them up ourselves, or do you want me to go through?
Please mention your second one, Johnny.
I'll go first. Then. So I said that would be top 5 for set pieces scored. I mean, we apparently we hired a set piece coach this year, so I thought
we got good intel.
Good
Whoever
intel,
gave us that intel, thanks.
And then Dana, you said top 3 for set piece goals scored. The second part of it for me, because yours did happen, Dana. You said Elijah Gilbert will outscore Chuba Akpom, and he did with 1 goal.
Amazing.
And I said Sammy Silvera will outsist Ryan Giles, which is a shocker.
Oh dear.
He had 3 assists all season. Well, I mean, shocking. You know what? I feel like, if you go into a car garage and the salesman sells you a dodgy motor, that's kind of how it felt with Sammy Silvera. Because it looked flash from the outside, and it was shit on the inside for some parts of it. But no, I actually think Sammy Silvera is going to come good next year. That's my bold prediction. But I don't know which club he's going to be at. But Tom, yours was an unfortunate one, I would say, because your bet builder did come off with Lenihan scoring. But Marcus Forss reaching 20 goals. Now, I might be able to give you this one, but if you look at Boro goal per minute for Marcus Forss, if you add it all up accumulated 46 games of the season, he would have scored 20 goals. But he was injured for most part and therefore did not hit your ball prediction of Marcus Forss reaches 20 goals. So, unfortunately,
blame him for being made of glass.
Well, that's exactly it. So if he wasn't made out of glass, you probably would have been celebrating that one. And it'd been a great ball prediction. But this rounds us off to the pretty much the final part of the Boro Breakdown review show, and it is the season review, high point of the season, and we're going to come to each other and say what our favourite part of the season was, or that definitely the high point. So, Dinmo, what was very, very similar here for Dana, Matt, and I, but our high point was.
It's Chelsea at home, but I also want to mention that my secondary favourite part of the season, Johnny, is when you couldn't record with Argyle Life because there was an unexploded World War II bomb that forced them to evacuate their house. So that's why we didn't have a Plymouth opposition show. So that was the secondary favourite moment of the season.
I mean, yeah, that's one way to say you can't do a podcast. To be fair, isn't it? You know what I mean? That's the one. That's one good excuse. But to be fair, it was legit. We were actually about to sit down about an hour before or something, and then breaking news, and I was like, I don't suppose you're affected by this. And they're like, I just got a selfie of being evacuated, mate. And I was like, class,
amazing, absolutely amazing.
So we did say Chelsea first leg was our high point. Matt, I don't know if you've got any more to add to your Chelsea first leg, or no, you're just happy with that one.
It was actually you being on top of me, mate, in the North Stand. It wasn't. It was nothing to do with Hackney's goal or anything. It was just that moment, obviously. But no, it was it was that game and that night. Also, credit the Sunderland fan for the bearer, because that Sam Greenwood rant was in my head rent free for about 3 months after that game. So that needs a mention.
100%. And then Tom, what have you went with for your high point of the season?
Oh, I had to be different with mine, but I've gone with us beating Sunderland 4-0. Purely on a personal note, it's always good to win a derby game, and it is a derby game. So we will kind of throw that out there. But after the game the previous season where Ross Stewart did a swan dive into the box from about 5 yards outside of it and got a penalty, I had to put up with a couple of cocky Sunderland fans at work who were having a laugh about it in the weeks afterwards. Weirdly enough, after this one, quite quiet. One of them actually left our group chat in my team at work, so and didn't want to come back for a couple of weeks. So yeah, it's always a nice one to beat Sunderland, and especially by that sort of margin as well.
100%. And then for all the highs, you have your lows, and we've all went different with this one. Well, me and Tom have actually went the same. Sorry, to be honest. But what, Dana, what was your low point of the season?
There's been a few, to be fair, but I did change mine to Coventry at home on New Year's Day, because that was the game where we all looked at the team and we thought, fuck, there's a bench of Alex Gilbert, Alex Bangura, Hayden Coulson, and then the other players were youngsters. So the bench was essentially propped up with academy players. And I like seeing the academy players getting involved and being included in the matchday squad, but not because they have to make this squad up. So that was particularly bad. And you know what? That game as well, in the first half, I thought Boro played well, but it was quite tight in the scoreline, tight in the game. And I remember saying and thinking at the time, whoever makes the next move, the next tactical move, brings on somebody or whatever, they're essentially going to win the game. Michael Carrick didn't have many options to bring off the bench in that game. Now, I'm not saying we would have won it, but I think we would have fared much better if we did have more options to come off the bench. But his hands were tied, basically, because the only real attacking option that you could put on there was an untested Alex Gilbert or putting Alex Bangura at left wing. So, yeah, there's various things that maybe he could have done with the squad or the team that he already had in that game. But I think they were also quite, not goosed, but when you have played the same team for the majority of the game and their quality level is waning, you've got to bring fresh legs on. Boro just didn't have the option there. So I think that was a particularly low point in regards to the whole injury crisis.
And then for me and you, Tom, I feel like you've controlled V for a lot of our moments. Practically the same person. But we both said El Crapico, Sheffield Wednesday away, is pretty much a low point. And to be honest, Tom, I don't know if you agree with me, but that first half was probably one of the worst 45 minutes I think I've ever encountered in my life. I think because that was,
and you know what, I've said that a few times this season as well. Usually with home games as well, which is why me thing for next season was to win more home games. But that was coming at a point as well where I was getting worried about us and worried, about was Carrick actually the real deal, or was he kind of like, did he benefit from something last season and isn't able to kind of turn it around this season? And I was starting to lose a lot of hope around that time. And that game, you looked at it and think, if we're ever going to beat anyone, it's going to be Sheffield. And we didn't. And I was just like, what is this season turning into? Thankfully, we turned it around quickly after that. But that was a real low point.
And then for you, Matt, to round things off on the low point, what did you go for?
I went with the defeat to Stoke away. Equally, that was, I think, as bad. And it was the first and only time this season. And I know hindsight's a wonderful thing and it's all good looking back, and you might feel a bit silly looking back now, given the wonderful end to the season we've had. But I genuinely didn't see where our next win would come from. I genuinely didn't believe Michael Carrick would or had the ability to change our fortunes, which he did, obviously. And I began to worry that we were going to get sucked into a relegation battle. And at the time, the teams beneath or between us and the drop were winning games. We couldn't buy a win. And I just felt like with the team we had, if we had got sucked in, we weren't built to fight our way out of it. So I felt like we were sinking very close to the trapdoor, falling into a relegation scrap. And I got a bit anxious around that period after that defeat. Obviously, it's all good looking back now. We can laugh about it now, but that for me was my absolute low point of the season.
It's an absolute stinker. But we'll move on to sign of the season, and we've all come together on this one. And we've all said Rav van den Berg is our sign of the season. I feel he's just been so good, hasn't he? Like, I think for what we've got him for and how he's developed and what he's turning into, for me, I think it's been so special. And I think we've got a really good gem in Rav van den Berg. I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that before I move on to favourite player of the season. So I'll keep it going, Tom.
I just think it's such a good signing considering the level he was playing at beforehand, and his age as well. For us to have spotted a player of Rav's age and just think, you know what, he's going to not only cut it in the championship, but be, a signing that will eventually go on to either achieve great things for us or, a bigger team in his career, which, is very much possible. It's credit to the scouting team for finding him and for bringing him in. Credit to Carrick for coaching him. With Carrick on the coaching team for coaching him, and I think it was said early on in the season that he was probably put into the team a bit quicker than anyone would have wanted for him, and we did want him to kind of settle a bit before throwing him in and kind of introduce him gently. But what he's been able to do since coming into the team, like just for a player that none of us had ever heard of. I doubt a lot of the Boro fan base had, or any championship fan base had heard of him before this season. To find him and bring him in and to have the impact that he's had, that is one hell of a signing from us.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of leads quite nicely to our favourite player of the season, because Tom, you and me, we both went with Rav van den Berg as our favourite player this season. And I think, and we can just echo like what we were saying there, like how good he's been. And hopefully, fingers crossed, this is just the start for him. And I really hope he develops even more this coming season. But Matt and Dana, you've went slightly different to us. Dana, who was your favourite player this year?
I've gone for Baldini, Matt Clark. I've really enjoyed his story this season and coming back from that back injury that sidelined him for so long. His performances at the centre of our defence have been really impressive considering that. And he has really posed the question that we discussed a couple of podcasts ago, actually, of who starts in centre half, who's the pairing for us next season, or who's the trio for us next season. He has to be in it. He absolutely has to be in it. I've really enjoyed watching his comeback and his performance levels. And he just looks like he's enjoyed his football as well. He loves defending, Matt Clark. You can tell that. And I have really enjoyed his season. There's Latte Lath as well. I've enjoyed watching Rav too. But I do have to shout out Matt Clark because I'm a sucker for a story, as I mentioned before. So, yeah, Baldini gets my shout.
Yeah, loves defending beers in that order. Does Matt Clark. And then Matt, who have you went with? Is to round things off as your favourite player of the season before we move on to our Boro Breakdown Player of the Year?
Yeah, I went with Latte Lath. I just love watching him. I love watching him first and foremost because I think he's absolutely chaotic and you just don't know what you're going to get. He just runs for days. He causes defenders problems. He just gives off this like mischievous sort of Jack Russell sort of centre forward. He'll just hassle and harry the defenders. He'll get in their way. He'll annoy them. He'll irritate them. I just love him as a personality as well. I think he just comes across as such a likeable footballer, but at the same time, a bit like with what Dana was saying about the story aspect as well, I've just loved seeing him grow because coming into the squad, there were plenty of times this season where we looked at him and we thought he just hasn't got the composure. He hasn't got the composure to finish chances. But the way that he's turned into a player who's scored so many different types of goals and he scored them really, really well. That header against Leeds just stands out in my head as an unbelievable moment. He would have been on track, given the amount of time he's been injured as well. He would have been a 20-goal season striker without doubt. And I think without last season, we were spoilt with Archer and Akpom. We've been so unfortunate with strikers over the last God knows how many years. Bamford's the only one who stands out, who might have got 19 goals. So let's not take for granted the job Latte Lath has done, coming into a new country, a new squad, new language, and grow and develop and finish as well as he has done. So I think as a player, he deserves that. But also as a personality, I just love him and I love watching him. I think he's brilliant. So I'll give mine to Latte Laugh.
Yeah, and honestly, I echo you on that header because it was just amazing. We couldn't believe it when it went in. Again, you end up on top of me this time. We'll move on to probably the part of the show where everyone's like, God, you guys are still going. But we are, because we've got still some stuff to do. We've got a Boro Breakdown Player of the Year, and the winner of this is... It is Mr. Rav Vandenberg. Congratulations to Rav on an exceptional achievement. So, Rav, well done to you and your family. I haven't got an award.
It's the best award that he'll win this season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We're going to celebrate. I don't know where it is. I can't even give you a little trophy. So, congrats, I guess. So. He was also, obviously, he's done really well this year, hasn't he? He's been not just voted Boro Breakdown Player of the Year, Red Faction Player of the Year. He also got our Sign of the Season. And also, he got voted Player of the Season and Young Player of the Season in our end of season survey, which leads us quite nicely to it. Yes, you are nearly there, Boro fans, if you are still listening to us. But there's 265 people that filled out our form in total, and we'll kick things off with our Player of the Year. Kind of give it away ever so slightly a little bit earlier on. But Rav Vandenberg is our Player of the Season in terms of the end of season survey. Johnny Howson, Emmanuel Latte Laugh, Matt Clark, and Senny Dieng also getting notable mentions. Latte Laugh coming second, Howson coming third, Matt Clark coming fourth, and then Senny Dieng, Matt, is coming just after that as well. And also a big notable mention for Luke Ayling too. And then we'll move on quite nicely to the young Player of the Season. Now, a lot of people...
landslide.
This might be a landslide, this. But yeah, 93% of people said that Rav Vandenberg was the young Player of the Season this year, followed by Hayden Hackney, and then some notable mentions for Josh Coburn, and then Sammy Silvera with just the one vote.
Was that Dana?
Yeah,
absolutely
maybe.
wasn't. I didn't notice that actually until just now.
And then we'll move on to goal of the season. Now, there was a lot of really good goals this year, I found. Probably like last header was being a definitely notable one. Matt, I think we both love that one. But voted by 40% of the end of season result survey and voted for Sam Greenwood's free kick against Leicester City. Now, I think we and no one expected this to go top bins. And the scenes that happened when it went in were amazing. And following that was Marcus Forster's volley against Sunderland.
Robbed. That should have won, in my opinion. I really liked Marcus Forster's volley against Sunderland. I mean, I really liked Sam Greenwood's free kick against Leicester as well. But I'm going to say that Marcus Forster's volley against Sunderland is robbed. It's rigor mortis, as Alyssa Edwards once said on Drag Race.
We do love a bit of Drag Race on this show. And speaking of Drag Race, Manuel Laugh's header was third. And then finally it was coming in. Just after that was Hayden Hackney's goal against Chelsea. Then that caught you off guard massively, didn't it? And then we'll move on to the high point and the low points of the season. And I feel like this is echoing what we pretty much said earlier in the show. That Chelsea 1-0 was the highlight of the season. The 4-0 win against Sunderland was second. Boris Strong finish was third. Emmanuel Latte Laugh scoring all 15 goals one. And then there's a notable mention here for two things. One, doing a double over Leicester, one of the only teams to do it this year. And then secondly, Maddo calling Johnny Howson an absolute gangster against Huddersfield. Again, getting that notable mention. The low point, though, 32% of people said that Boro's poor start of the season was the low point of the season. Second to that, Matt, I am blaming this entirely on you, was failing to beat Rotherham this year. That came in second. And then that drab draw away at Sheffield Wednesday was third. And then the ticket price increase is actually being a noticeable one as well, with Boro fans still unhappy with the increases this year. Now, we'll move on to some really key ones here around, do you have faith in the recruitment team? Now, not many people do. However, And on a scale of 1 to 10, we asked Boro fans how much faith you have in Boro's recruitment team. There was 1.1% said 1, so not happy at all. There was 0.4% that said 2, 0.4 for 3, and for 4. A few for middle of the road, so 4.5% of Boro fans who filled in the survey said that they were meh about the recruitment team. However, this was a bit of a step change because from 7 to 10, we had a lot of people start to probably go down towards the end of the field here, but 43% of Boro fans said that Boro's recruitment team is an 8 out of 10. Now, I think we've improved massively in this space over the last couple of seasons. So I would probably fall on the 8 mark. And, if we continue in this vein over the next couple of seasons, then I can definitely see us go to that number 10, where 9% of Boro fans said that's where Boro will be at number 10, or what they think of it already. We'll move on to the final two. So the second to last one, the penultimate one, is on a scale of 1 to 10, how much faith do you have in Michael Carrick, with 1 being no faith at all, and then 10 being, well, he's just bigger than Jesus. And we've said with 45% of the vote, and if you want to kind of add the another one here, 75% of Boro fans are at 9 and 10 of faith. So a lot of people have some George Michael feeling with some faith in Michael Carrick this season. For right now, I think 45% of faith in Michael Carrick is a really good indicator that he has some solid backing for next year, and hopefully has time to develop it. And then finally, the last one out of the survey, our survey says, on a scale of 1 to 10, how optimistic are you for next season, with 1 being not optimistic at all, Don, and 10 being we're very optimistic, Don. Now, 33% of Boro fans said that they were 8 out of 10 for next season. They're fairly optimistic. 26% said 9 out of 10. And then 21% were 10 out of 10. So if you add all that up together, you do get a solid number here of 80% of Boro fans saying that they were very excited for next season. How about that for quick maths on my end? But guys, that rounds the review show off. I see we've been going for a long time, we've been speaking for over 2 hours, but the podcast has been going for 1 hour and 42 minutes. But guys, thank you very much for joining me as always. And this is not the end of us throughout the summer. We do provide some additional content. We'll be giving you the lowdowns. We'll be giving you some extra content, and maybe, and just maybe, you'll see Boro Breakdown go road to Division 1 on Pro Clubs, where we've been trying our hardest to get to the best division out there on EAFC, with Jim Clocks in midfield, the sausage man up top in Dynamo, and then Matt Rowney is a winger, and then we believe in Joe Hendry up top as well, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we can get there. But for right now, this has been the Boro Breakdown review show, and that was our Boro Matchday Chatter in a pod up the butter.